Merry Christmas to you. I'm Todd Yeary, and this is Due Process. As we mark the celebration of Christmas Day again and we approach the beginning of another year, it's important that we review some of the key stories that dominated 2021. In January, the shift in power began with the unlikely scenario of turning a red state blue. The dual runoffs for U.S. Senate in Georgia saw the election of two unlikely candidates in a state historically known for exclusion and racial hostility. John Ossoff won his runoff election against David Perdue, and Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock, pastor of the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, won his runoff election over Kelly Loeffler. Fueled by massive voter registration and mobilization efforts led by Stacey Abrams, Black Voters Matter, Transformative Justice Coalition, Rainbow Push Coalition, and others, the scene was set to change the legislative outcomes on behalf of the people most in need of significant government action. The two victories, along with the electing of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the first woman of color as vice president, would give Senate control to the Democratic Party, but as we have seen all year, it would not make progress any easier to achieve. The legislative actions for the year began with the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, which provided much-needed government aid to state and local governments to assist with the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. The funds were targeted at addressing issues created or exacerbated by the pandemic and eased the burden from raising taxes at the local and state levels to make up for lost state revenues. This legislation was followed up by the $1.2 trillion physical infrastructure bill, intended to address the critical needs of roads, bridges, airports, railways, and seaports across the country. Many of the places in greatest need have infrastructure that is crumbling or beyond repair. The jury is still out on the impact of these dollars, but rest assured that Rainbow Push Coalition will be pressing the Biden administration to ensure that equity is at the core of the use of these funds across the country. Meanwhile, the human infrastructure bill ends the year as an optimistic goal, having been undermined by narrow strategy and the intra-party nemesis, Senator Joe Manchin. Manchin, along with Senator Kyrsten Sinema, have proven to be thorny obstacles to the president's agenda, with neither open to amending Senate rules to overcome the filibuster in order to get key legislation passed. Primary among the unfinished bills remain voting rights protection and police reform. While many Republican-led states are gerrymandering districts to erode black voting, new voter suppression laws are being put in place to allow for the arbitrary overturning of elections by the whims of Republican majorities. While the president has indicated that these issues remain at the top of his priority list, it will take a renewed effort on the part of all of us in a new year to see if any of it comes to pass. Many of the major stories in 2021 have been in the area of criminal justice, in the trials of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, in the murder of George Floyd, in the trials of the McMichaels, Travis and Gregory, and William Roddy Bryan in the killing of Ahmaud Arbery. Both trials were buoyed by the presence of video showing the heinous acts of the perpetrators, making it difficult to explain away, as had been attempted in both cases, these deaths as other than routine. The country stood mesmerized, concerned, and anxious while awaiting jury verdicts. Chauvin has since pleaded guilty in the federal civil rights action against him, and the McMichaels and Bryan are awaiting sentencing. In these cases, justice did indeed prevail. However, we all know that there is more work to do, even as former Minnesota police officer Kim Potter is awaiting her fate by jury in the killing of Daunte Wright. Finally, today is a special day in the life of Rainbow Push Coalition and for the work that we continue to do. It was on this day, Christmas Day in 1971, that Operation Push was formed to build on the foundational leadership of Reverend Jackson and Operation Breadbasket. It was the establishment of Breadbasket that was Reverend Jackson's direct assignment from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That year, 1971, marked more than 3 years since the assassination of Dr. King and the culmination of the Great Society legislation in 1968 with the passage of the Fair Housing Act, which was passed just 1 week after Dr. King's assassination. Vietnam was still in view as the intractable war that was never declared, and Richard Nixon had begun to lay the foundation for the devastation of Black and brown communities with the failed war on drugs. The need for continued economic progress and civil rights action was great, and Reverend Jackson stood ready to continue the work in the legacy of Dr. King. 50 years since that Christmas Day in 1971, we're still fighting. Economic justice is still wanting, and civil rights protections under constant assault. The ever-elusive quest for justice finds itself under overt attack in courtrooms, boardrooms, hearing rooms, and even at the very door of the American democracy. The struggle is not over, not by far. As we celebrate and observe 50 years of service and sacrifice for Operation Push, we are all called to stand up for what is right. As much as we tout the progress of America around the world in so many ways, there is still so much work to be done. We must recognize that there is a persistent and real threat to this progress in the form of judicial hostility and the erasure of laws designed to protect the liberty interest of all people. Whether it be voting rights, education, public health, economic justice, labor rights, women's rights, criminal justice reform, fair housing, international human rights, or access to opportunity, standing up is not merely our cause, it is our calling. Rainbow Push Coalition continues the foundational work begun as Operation Push 50 years ago today. And as we honor 80 years of life and over 6 decades of sacrifice and service of our founder, Reverend Jesse Jackson, it is critically important that we not only remember, but we recommit and invest the best of ourselves in the ongoing struggle for human dignity and human decency as human rights. Celebrate with us today as we commemorate a half-century milestone, and join us as we continue the long march into a future that is more just and equitable than our current circumstance. Go to rainbowpush.org and become a member today for only $35 for an adult member, and gift a membership for a friend or loved one. The fight is real and the fight continues, but we cannot do it alone. We need committed, passionate, justice-minded partners like yourselves to make our collective victory real. Continue to watch us in the new year and throughout 2022 as we celebrate 80 years of the strength and purpose of Reverend Jackson, and 50 years of service devoted to the prospect that we are all entitled to human dignity, because I am, you are, we are somebody. Happy anniversary, and let's always remember to keep hope alive. That's Due Process for 2021. I'm Todd Yeary. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you.